Hello, I'm Llewellyn King. For many decades, I've covered energy and energy policy, energy technology. Today, the excitement to me seems to be in what was once the far-out world of ocean energy, kinetic energy from the waves, the tides, even the streams. And one man who knows more about this than anyone, who has done more to bring it to the public attention and to bring together the disparate companies and technologies working towards the goal of clean, renewable, unpolluting, safe electricity from the oceans, is Sean O'Neill, President of the Ocean Renewable Energy Coalition. Sean, you should be congratulated, and I'm talking to you, I might as well tell people, at your annual meeting here in Washington. And what a display of technologies, of brains, of people, and a palpable excitement, which one doesn't find at very many meetings these days. What's going on? Why this electricity in the room about making electricity in the ocean?
We've got a small community, and it's an international community. We've got people from Scotland and Japan and Australia and New Zealand, Portugal, Spain, all over the place. And we've been working on this for about 7 years in the United States. Over in Scotland and some other places, I would say perhaps 10 years.
But I can tell you it's been talked about for decades.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's been a wish in Maine ever since FDR. And Maine right now has the very first tidal turbine. Actually, it's the first offshore renewable energy turbine grid connected in the United States. And we'll have the first offshore wind turbine up in Maine once again in the United States.
And as I said in the introduction, this is non-polluting, no carbon, year-round, not like wind, which blows and doesn't blow, and no visual impact.
Well, and very predictable. But once again, there's no mining, there's no drilling, there's no processing, no refining, no carbon dioxide, no SO2, no NOx, no mercury, no trace metals. Fossil fuels are something that we're going to have to live with for at least another 40 or 50 years. But as we move off of the fossil fuel habit, and we need to do that in an orderly fashion, we need to put in place reliable, affordable generating capacity so that we can then start taking the old plants offline. It should be a process. It should be a rational process, getting from point A to point B, so that we do have a cleaner environment and we do have an economic development engine that comes through from renewable energy. And when you think of the jobs that are going to come from marine renewable energy, those are jobs that are well-paying, they're family wage jobs, and they're on the coast where most of the population is, and the generation will be by where the population is.
What states have helped to foster marine energy?
Well, Maine has been absolutely terrific, but Oregon, Washington, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Florida have all been very active. Virginia is starting to catch on. North Carolina is also catching up very quickly. And it's such a young industry that when people start, they catch up very quickly. And they're very bright people.
There are more than 25, maybe 50 different ways of harnessing this power in the ocean. Are there any leaders, anything coming out front looking most promising?
Well, actually, worldwide, there's about 100 technologies being looked at. In the US, we're looking at about 47. What the leaders are at this point, I would have to say they all are. And the reason that they all are is they have not converged into, like with wind, we have a 3-bladed turbine that everybody knows what it looks like. And that's where the technology converged into one. With so many different technologies, certain technologies are going to be good in certain environments, and other technologies will be good in other environments. For example, you've got tidal turbines, some that will be working in shallower water than the deeper water. If you've got a real deep area that's got a good tidal flow, you might have a large turbine that stands very tall. If the water's not as deep, you might have something that looks like a helical turbine, like an old-fashioned push lawnmower, like they have up in Maine, which works very well. So it goes back to suiting the technology to the environment and vice versa.
All electric generating technologies depend on a utility company to buy them and distribute them. How do the utilities feel about this newest addition to the renewable fleet?
Utilities for decades have been saying that diversity of supply is key to reliability. It gives you options. And what we need to do as an industry is get enough run time so that we can actually put performance guarantees on the table with these utilities so that they can then give us some certainty in terms of how much we get paid.
Do you benefit from things like the renewable portfolio standard?
Yes, we do. There's no question, and we support the renewable portfolio standard, blah, blah, blah. But that's one tool in the whole toolbox. We did a roadmap, a technology roadmap in the United States about a year and a half ago with the help of the U.S. Department of Energy and the National Renewable Energy Lab. And what we saw was over in Europe, they had three things that really set them apart. They had consistent funding from the government for research and development. They had a testing infrastructure. They've got 47 different testing facilities throughout Europe, all different types. And they even have a program now called Marinée that is funded by the EU. And if you're a company in Europe, you can go test your device at any one of the 47 places for free.
We have nothing like that here.
We're just getting our testing infrastructure into the water. We had our first test this past summer off the coast of Oregon with Oregon State University and the Pacific Northwest Marine Energy Center, Marine Renewable Energy Center. And we've had some tests in Massachusetts, in New Hampshire, Florida Atlantic University down in Florida. Off the coast of North Carolina, the North Carolina Coastal Studies Institute has tested one of Resolute Marine's wave energy devices, which is a hinged flap, which goes back and forth, and it sits in the bottom of the ocean. So they had a very successful test there. So we're catching up quickly. Now, that was the first two. The third was having some sort of market-based incentive rate as a market pull mechanism, like Ocean Renewable Power Company has up in Maine. They get a favorable rate because they're producing emission-free electricity that is also fuel-free. It took me decades to really understand why renewable power just didn't beat fossil fuel, because fossil fuel requires a lot of work. You know, the mining and the drilling and everything else. And nuclear as well. And really, it comes down to power density. The water happens to be 800 times more dense than air. So that gives us at least an indication that perhaps using water in a kinetic fashion is going to be great.
When do you think we'll see these widely deployed? 20 years, 30 years?
Once traction gets hit, once we hit critical mass, which means we'll have to have a few in the water in, say, the next 5 to 7 years. I think we'll hit critical mass. We'll be, right now, today at our conference, we're talking about design for manufacturing. In other words, how do we get into mass production? Because that's what lowers the cost of energy tremendously. So we'll be ready in 5 to 7 years. Once we start figuring out which technologies are best suited for each area, that will, I think, once we get traction, it's going to take off tremendously. It will be like an atomic reaction.
Marvelous. Hugely exciting. Thank you very much.
Thank
Sean
you very
O'Neill.
much.